Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Here is a fun summer project featuring Peter Rabbit in the farmer's garden. I used a vegetable background and Lavinia's Woodland Hares with the wheelbarrow. I hope you enjoy the tutorial. So let's take a look at the supplies that I'm going to be using today. We will start out with a piece of the Lavinia Multifarious Smooth and Supreme cardstock. This is cut to 4 3/4 inches by 3.5 inches. Then I created a frame to put around my piece. This is just a piece of plain cardstock that is cut to be 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And then for my card base, I took an 8.5 by 11 piece of craft cardstock, and I cut that in half, and then I took one of those pieces and folded it in half to create my card base. For our stamps today, we will use the Lavinia Woodland Hares. This one is LAV 409. I'm going to use the little Lavinia Wheelbarrow. This one is LAV 954. We'll also go ahead and use some of the Rosemary sprigs. This one is LAV 947. I'll use the Lavinia Oak Leaf Branch, LAV 468. And then for my vegetable background, I have the All and Create Vegetables number 448. I have actually taken those and separated them out into little individual packages so I can find them a little easier. But with that, we are going to use the carrots, the radishes, and the tomatoes. For the inks today, I'm going to use Distress inks. I have got the Distress Ink Bundled Sage, Twisted Citron. I'm using the Distress Oxide Hickory Smoke to create my background vegetables. Then we've got the Distress Black Soot. And for our tans and brown colors, we'll be using the Brush Corduroy and the Vintage Photo. For my basic stamping ink, I'm going to use the Versafine Clair Nocturne. I'm also going to have my stamping platform on hand, as well as some blending brushes. And then I like to ground my little bunny rabbit in the wheelbarrow by drawing in some grass sprigs. So I've just got a couple of fine point black ink pens that I can choose from for doing that part of the project. And then when we go to put our project together, I'll just use an adhesive running tape, but you can also use a paper glue to do that part of the project. All right, let's get started working on our project. To start out our project, we are going to get our art card base, the Multifarious, and the Bundled Sage. Let me find that right there. And what I'm going to start out doing is just taking the Bundled Sage and layering a solid layer over the entire surface of the card. As you layer this on, you don't need to worry about it being all solid in the same one color all the way across. It can have variations of light and dark of the Bundled Sage across the card. This just enhances the look of the card because you've got the various shades. So just take that and blend it across your entire surface. Alright, so once you've got a base layer down, we will then go ahead and add in just a little bit of interest by adding a few different colors, just blending them across. So we'll take the Twisted Citron, and what I'm going to do with this is just dash it around in a few places. I'm not going to have it over the entire surface so that we've got a little variation in our colors. Again, just kind of dash it in there. Then we will go on and grab our brushed corduroy. And do the same thing. We're just going to kind of dash it around in places. Alright, so it just kind of looks a little splotchy now, but it's really going to look great once we start putting all of our stamps in there. If you'd like to, sometimes what I like to do, once I've gotten my base colors down, is I go back to my lightest shade lightly. I don't even necessarily have to add any color to it. Lightly, just blend over, and this just takes all of our colors that we've dashed on there and blend them nicely with the background. So again, this one was the bundled sage, and I'm just taking what's still left on the ink, on the brush, and just going over it. Just softens it a little bit and blends those colors together. Okay, so now what we want to do is go ahead and put in our background vegetables. I'm going to pull out my stamping platform. Move some of these things out so I don't knock them off out of the way there. And we are going to just lay our card down on that stamping platform. Pull out our Hickory smoke and our AAll and Create vegetables. So I think I'll just start out with my carrots. And I'm just going to kind of place them just kind of across the top edge there. Ink that up. And the nice thing about the hickory smoke is that it just gives you a nice light color. So you can still see the background, but it's not necessarily real sharp and distinct. So it's a very nice soft background look. Alright, so once we've got our carrots down, let's remove that and let's go ahead and move on maybe to our radishes. Just going to kind of place them right there. And we'll continue that process with our tomatoes, and then I will come back in and probably put just a little bit of leaves up in that little top corner. So once we get all of our vegetables kind of placed around there for our little background, we're going to want to go ahead and pick up our vintage photo and a blending brush. And what we're going to do is we're just going to blend that across the bottom of our card. I'm going to go ahead and remove the stamping platform for the moment. We will come back to that. So what I'm going to do is take this little bit of the vintage photo, and we're just going to kind of swipe it here across the bottom. Just kind of build up just a little bit of ground for our rabbit in our wheelbarrow. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was, without having to really do some grass, I wanted to kind of give just a little bit of an idea of grass. So I'm taking my little stamp pad here and just dabbing a little bit, trying to get a little bit of the edges in there. And this just gives us a little bit of a kind of an idea that maybe there's some grass down there in our ground area. And you can always go back over and smooth it just a little bit with your brush. But this just gives you that nice look of the ground with some dried grass on it. Okay, so now that we have got that down, we're ready to go ahead and stamp our hare and our wheelbarrow, our oak leaves, and the rosemary sprigs. So the first thing that I want to do is go ahead and grab my stamping platform again. And we will go ahead and put our hare on first. Now, one of the things that you may notice, and I actually like the way it kind of looked, is that because of the Distress Oxide, when we use the Oxide ink, sometimes that will bleed through or show through just a little bit when you are doing your regular stamping, your regular ink, black ink or whatever your base ink is. And at first I wasn't real sure if I liked that idea, but after I finished my demonstration card, I found that I really kind of liked the way that looked. It just kind of adds a really interesting and unique kind of look, texture, I guess you might say, to it. So when you do this, if you do it over, you use it as Distress Oxide, you will probably notice that little bit of bleed through. If you, let's see, if you don't want to have that bleed through quite as much, then what I would recommend is that you use the regular Distress ink. It will not show up as sharply as it does with the Oxide. Alright, so let me get that. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a little bit of a second stamping, but first I got a little bit, grab my baby wipe here, got a little bit of ink on my door here, and I don't want that to transfer on. I actually got a pretty good image, but I'm going to go ahead and just give him one more little coat. Alright, and now we've got a really good image for our hare. Now what I want to do is stamp the wheelbarrow. So we'll find a nice little place where we can place our wheelbarrow. Maybe even do that just a little bit lower. Excuse me. Let's see where I want to place that. Okay, how about right about there? That looks good. And I'm going to stamp that. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do, and it may not make as much difference, but I'm going to make a mask so that when I put my rosemary into my wheelbarrow, we're not going to have to worry quite so much about any of that rosemary going on the outside of the wheelbarrow. So I'm going to stamp my wheelbarrow, and I use the Lavinia masking sheets. You could probably use a painter's tape as well, but I love the masking sheets because what I do with that is I will take this stamp, so I have stamped this image down. I will then take a piece of the masking sheet, and this is what you see was what I've done, and stamp it again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out just that top edge. So once I've stamped that on there, cut out that top edge, I just lay that over the top of my wheelbarrow. And then this way, when I put down my rosemary, like this, then when I do my stamping, that's going to stamp out or mask out the wheelbarrow. And let me lay that back down. And so it masks out my wheelbarrow so that I don't get any of that rosemary showing up on stamping on it. So, okay, so I've got that masked down. Taking my rosemary sprig and stamping on top. So as you can see, now it looks like my rosemary sprig is popping out. Since I have used this piece of masking sheet several times, I don't have as much stickiness. So if you use a fresh one, you won't get quite so much lift up of the mask. But since I have used this mask several times, this is probably the last time I'll be able to use it. It sticks to my stamp, but that's okay. So now I'm just going to take that small piece of the sprig from the pack, and we'll do one on this edge, and then we'll do one on the right hand edge as well. So there's a little sprig on the left hand side, and we'll do our final masking and stamping right on there, right hand side, with a little sprig as well. Like I said, you probably will want to use a fresh piece and you won't have to worry about it sticking to your stamp. You'll have a lot more sticky down than I do since I've used it several times. Alright, and so now I can throw this piece away, and we can stamp our oak leaf branch over here on the right hand side. So I'm going to take that, just place that up there in that corner. Ink up my stamp. All right. And there we have our stamping done. We are ready to go ahead and remove the card base from our stamping platform. And now let's go in and do a little bit of grounding for our rabbit and the wheelbarrow so they don't look like they're just floating around. So in order to do our grounding, this is where I'm going to use one of my little pens. We're going to see which one will work the best here. And what I'm basically going to do is just take my pen and draw a little bit of grounding with some grass sprigs, a few little dashes of line underneath my Woodland Hares feet and underneath our wheelbarrow. So that just gives it a look that it's not like it's floating around out there in the atmosphere. It actually gives it a little bit of something to stand on the ground with. Now, I also want to go ahead and just give it just a tiny little bit of, I guess, finishing edge. So I'm going to put a little bit of that grass up here at the top. Just kind of in little random places, just to show the distinction between the line of where the sky and the ground is. And then I'm going to add a few more. Just add just a few more of these little grass sprigs in there. A few little dashes of lines. And then as you can see, that just helps a little bit to make it feel like our items aren't floating around in the sky. Now, I always like to give a little bit of a distressed edge. Obviously, you don't have to do that if you don't want to, but to do that, I'm just going to take my vintage photo again, and I've actually got just a little dauber. I'm going to take that, and I'm just going to go in gentle little circles kind of around the outside edge of my card, just kind of to give a little bit of that distressed look. To me, it puts a nice little frame around my picture. Helps to draw the eye to the center. And just gives it to me in just a nice finished look. Again, as I said, this is optional. This is just something I really like to do. A squeaky little table there today, don't I? All right, so that just kind of ties it all together for me. And that's basically all there is to this card. It's a very simple, easy card to do. And now we can go ahead and start putting our card together. So we will take our piece of frame cardstock and flip my art card over, grab my running tape, or glue if you prefer. And run that along the edges. And then I'm just going to center that in the center of my piece of cardstock so that we get a nice, lovely frame. And then we will take our piece of cardstock that we've got for our card base, do the same process, turn that over, and center that nicely. Let's see which side of the card I like a little bit better there. Center that in the piece of our card there. I actually got that a little bit crooked. Let's see if I can straighten that up just a little bit. The one nice thing that I have found with using glue is it's a little more flexible. You have to be really careful when you're using the adhesive running tape because it doesn't like to be pulled back up. All right, and there we have our finished card. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I wasn't sure, as I said before, about how I felt about the vegetable outlines showing through slightly on the black stamping, but I really, really like the way that effect is. I hope you will give this project a try, and be sure to check out all the tutorials on the design team page at delbellosdesigns.com. Have a great day.